So thank you firstly for all joining us today. My name is Julia. I'm a customer marketing lead here at monday.com. Obviously we're here to hear from Kyle McEwen from MBooth Agency today, who's going to share how they have successfully integrated monday.com into all of their workflows. So before we pass it on to Kyle, just a few housekeeping rules. So firstly, throughout the webinar, we know you're probably going to have lots of questions for Kyle or generally what he's showing. So please put those questions in the Q&A box. You should see that at the bottom of the screen. We're going to have Sap here with us. She's from our CX team. She'll be answering anything that's kind of feature related in the Q&A box itself. So do keep an eye on the Q&A box. And we will be collecting some of your questions for a Q&A at the end live with Kyle. That should be in the last 15 minutes of the webinar. I've seen what Kyle's going to show you today, and it's absolutely jam-packed. So there is a chance we might go a little bit over, but we will aim for a 15-minute Q&A. There will be a recorded version sent out to you guys automatically if you registered and if you attended. So do not worry if you need to drop off early. You will get a recording of the webinar. And if you cannot see the screen or hear at any time, we are mostly working from home, so that can happen. Just pop it in the chat box and we'll keep an eye on that as well. So without further ado, I'd love to pass you over to Kyle.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julia. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm really excited to show you guys how we've been using Monday at MBooth. We've got a great team of project managers at MBooth who have really helped us incorporate monday.com along with the team at Monday. They've been super helpful. So just a quick agenda for what we're going to go through today. I'll quickly give you a brief introduction of myself and MBooth, let you guys know why we started using monday.com and how we use it. And then we'll jump into some use cases and I'll show you guys the gears behind the machine and how we're using Monday at MBooth. We'll do a few tips and impact conclusions, and then we'll have that quick Q&A that Julie mentioned. So hi, I'm Kyle McEwen. I'm the project manager here at MBooth. I'm a certified Scrum Master with a background in creative projects. And as you can all read, a fun fact about me is that I produced educational musicals for the Korean government using Scrum, actually, before working at MBooth. A lot of fun. MBooth, we are headquartered here in New York City. We've got 200 plus employees. And we've established ourselves as one of the most progressive mid-sized agencies in the world, especially when it comes to integrated campaigns that we come up with for our clients. We were recently named an Agency of the Decade by Provoke Media, formerly the Holmes Report. And we continue to build exceptional creative and digital capabilities for our clients. What MBooth uses monday.com to manage. So before we were using a different system, and it was just like being in the Stone Age. There was really no way to track data, have visibility across the board for all the users. So we made the choice to move to Monday and haven't looked back since. So these are just some of the ways we use Monday for design execution. So everything that would go into a design request, the briefs, tracking it, billing, all that stuff, and everyone works in that together. We also use it for client-facing timelines. So we keep ourselves and our clients all on the same page using monday.com. We also use it for some billing, keeping track of our incoming and outgoing expenses. Some administrative tasks like work from home statuses, vacations, etc. And then we also use it to create some really nice reporting and to generate some data. So that's been a really great thing to use with Monday. And I think we'll go ahead, we'll go ahead and dive into the boards. So the first one I would like to talk about is our design request board. So this is where all of our design information lives. It's quite a large board. We've got a lot of people working out of it. So that's the entire design team, which are the designers, the animators, the art directors, project managers, creative directors. And we work in tandem with some other departments around MBooth, like the digital strategy team or the accounts management team. And so basically, if anything's going to be designed or created, it's all going to live inside of this board, and we just track it out of this one place. But I think the best way to show you how we use this board is actually just to go ahead and show you the life cycle, so to speak, of a design task at MBooth. So I'm actually going to leave this board and I'm going to go to the place where these requests are born. And so to do that, of course, I can navigate to another board by going to these workspaces over here and scrolling and finding my board. However, if I did that every time, I would probably spend 1,000 years clicking around. So I'd love to use the bolt switch feature. I think it's a great time saver. So if you hit Command and V on your keyboard, you will pull up this bolt switcher. And this is how I dash around all the boards in our workspaces. So I'm going to go to the digital design board. Here we go. Here. And great. So we are now in the digital design board. So this board we created because we're working with a lot of different departments, as I mentioned, or a lot of different stakeholders. And we want each one to kind of have a scratch pad, so to speak, where they can come up with the tasks, where they can incubate a bit, because we don't want our main design board being filled up with unnecessary tasks or things that aren't ready to be executed on. So we created these separate boards. So in this example here, this digital team is using this as their design creation board. So you'll see in here we've got 4 different sections: backlog, templates, completed, and archive. And so again, I think the best way to show you how to use this is we'll just go ahead and start. So we have some standard templates created here. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate one. Of course, 2 ways to duplicate. You can either check the box here and click duplicate, or you can right click, duplicate. Great. So now we have the birth of our new design here. We're going to go ahead and change this. Let's see, what should we create today? Something easy. Let's do a feature length animation. Something light. Great, so we got that created here. And if we jump in, we can see that we have these info boxes here. And the info boxes is where we keep the brief template that we want everyone to fill out. And that's why we duplicated it here, so that this copies over. So we have our strategy or accounts team or other designers jump in here, and they'll edit these and fill out, answering all the questions we would like to know before we get designing. Great, so once that's created, the requester is going to go ahead and they're going to pop in the billing code. So I'm sure, like a lot of you out there, there's a lot of clients we need to bill to, and we need to make sure we keep accurate billing. So we'll pick this bill code here. Why not? Quantity, so how many deliverables are we going to be creating? It'll just be 1 feature length animation. I think that's enough for today. Request type, just some basic types of design that we have. So this feature length is definitely an animation. The requester is going to put their name in. For today, that's me. And then we also have this level column here. So that's it's just a basic status column. And you can see we've got 5 different levels. So in the course of using monday.com, we've come up with this system that we use across the board, which I can go into more detail later on. But basically, we've leveled out different design tasks. So something easy would be a level 1, and something more difficult would be a level 5. And so as a team, we've decided that for level 5 things, we need at least, for example, 12 days notice to start on those, because a lot of work's going to go into a feature length animation, which, by the way, we haven't made one yet, but one day. So if we go ahead and let's say this is a level 5, great. That is going to trigger our first automation. I'll just give it a second here. Hopefully it'll kick in. I'll just go ahead and show you while it's working. So up here in the automations, we have these level automations. So we told Monday, hey, when we set this level to level 5, I want you to automatically set the due date plus 12 days. So if we jump in here, just select the level column, which level, what the date column is, and then we put in how many days custom we would like it to go. So let's see if it's gone in there. Not yet. Well, can't make it work all the time. So normally that would just populate the date here automatically, 12 days in advance, which I think is the 8th. Great. And then we have this status column. So once the design request is all filled out, everything's ready to go, we're going to change the status. And you see here we have a few different statuses, but the one we mainly use at this stage is the ready status. So when they click ready, That should jump over. Great, it's disappeared, you'll see. So that just triggered another automation that we use. Up here, I'll go ahead and show you. So when status changes to ready, we're going to move item to that design request board, which we initially saw at the top of the webinar. So again, here, we're just telling it, pick this status column, change it to, or the status changes to ready, move item to the design request board. And then we just have to do some basic mapping. Monday does a really good job of automatically figuring out which things are going to link together. So for example, all this is saying is that the name of this task should be in the name column of the destination board, and so on and so forth. So great. So we've created our task. It's all ready to go. And now let's go back to the main board. And we do that by hitting Command B. And it's already up there because we just went to it, but we're going to go to the design request board. And jumping back in, now you'll see the feature length animation right here. So the project managers as a team, we basically live, breathe, and die in this new request section. We just watch it as stuff comes in and just keep an eye out on what's going on. So you'll see now a lot of this stuff carried over. So we have the requester, that's me, the type, the quantity, that's all in there. So I'll just go through basically some of the additional columns that you're seeing now that we use to track our requests. So this first one here is a time tracking column. And we use that so that the designers can keep track of how much time they spent on it. Really the use case for that is that if they need to like go do their time card at the end of the week, they can go see precisely how much time they spent on it. Or from a project management point of view, if we've got a similar request come in, we can do some analogous estimating to say, hey, these two projects were similar. How long did that last one take? So we can get really, really accurate with our estimates for our clients. And so that we can be giving the appropriate amount of time for these projects to get done. The designers can either hit that play button and let it ride, or they can go in and manually enter their time. We let them do either because some people love the timer, other people, they hit that play button and it is a runaway train. And suddenly a copy change took 76 hours. So we just help them stay on top of that and let them choose how to do it. The 80 time column is the art director time. That is similar. We want to help the art directors keep track of how much time they're spending. However, they're really jumping in and out of a lot of tasks, you know, giving feedback for 5 minutes on one and 5 minutes on another. So it's not really reasonable for them to start and stop a timer over and over. So we just have a simple numbers column where they can pop in their hours. So that would be an hour and 15 minutes. We have our people columns. So we just know who's assigned to what responsibilities are for each task. Request type and quantity, which we already covered. We also use a points system, a story point system. So some of you are probably already familiar with that, but basically we use a point system to evaluate the tasks that come in so that we can do an apples to apples comparison between two different things. So rather than estimating hours, we're going to use points. And that would be for, let's say if we give the same task to a senior level designer versus a junior. In theory, the senior level can do it faster than the junior, but the point value is the same. So it's really based on just the task itself. And we really use that point system as a backbone for a lot of estimating and forecasting, so which I'll show you guys later. Bill code, which we covered. The rate column, this is where we populate the designer's hourly rate. The cost column, which is just a formula that multiplies that time tracking column by the hourly rate to let us know how much we've spent roughly on that project. We have a date logged and date completed column. This is just basically timestamp. So when we've assigned out the task, we're going to put the date and time in here. And when the task was completed, we're going to put the date and time in here, which helps us calculate how long it took in days. We have a turn time column. So this is one that we use just for the project managers. When a task comes in, we're going to start this timer. And this is basically for us to measure how quickly these tasks are sitting here before someone's starting on them, because we don't want to waste any time or want to get that time down as minimum or as low as we can get it, so that we're you know, giving more time back to the designers to work on it and not having it sit here for too long. A tags column, which just lets us put in easy hashtags, like you see rush ones here, or best, which are some fine work. And then the last two columns we have are bucket and week ID. So bucket is a formula column, and the use case for this one is, so you'll see down here, for example, in the digital team, they've got a couple different build codes, and really in reality, it can be 5 or 10 build codes per team. And those are really used on finance, and there's a lot of reasons why we use one over the other. But from a project management perspective, a lot of the times I just want to know what this whole team is working on. So we've created this formula column, which looks terrifying, but it really is quite simple. It's just a switch statement, which basically says, if you see this build code, then put this label in here. So it's automatically labeling based on what build code is in here. So if I was to change this one to digital, there, it changes to digital. And then the last one is the week ID. We just keep track on a weekly basis of spending, output, all those wonderful data points. And so you'll see they're emptied out here. But when the date is completed, it uses a formula column, and it concatenates the week number based on the date completed, and then adds the year on the end. I know that was quite a lot, but we're through the worst of it. So those are all the columns we're using. And lastly, you'll see some of these have a little I with a cross through that. That basically means that we've made the column invisible to the general users on the board, with the exception of some certain people. So the use case for that is not like we want to keep things secret, but we just don't want to clutter up people's screen with information that's really not relevant to them, because the designers don't need to be worried about all this. We just want them to focus on their beautiful work. Okay, so we've got this project come in. As a project manager, I've scoped it out. I've read the brief. I've asked any questions I needed to ask to the strategy team or whatever the requester is. And now the big task of figuring out who is going to work on this. So the way we've been using Monday to figure that out is with the timeline view. So if we jump up here to the view switcher, we're going to go in here and switch to timeline. So you'll see now we're in the timeline view. And how this is set up, we go to settings here, we can see that we're viewing just the timeline date and the grouping by designers. So let me just show you one thing real quick. So the reason we've got due date and timeline date. So due date is the date that's like the drop dead date when we need to have it back in the hands of our client or whoever is requesting this. The timeline date we use as a way for us project managers to sort of schedule this out with the designer. So we're looking at the bigger picture, and we might say, hey, actually, this would be great if we could do this a lot sooner than June 8th. Or our backs are up against the wall on a lot of the projects. Let's go ahead and get it done by June 8th. So this is the timeline column is the column that the design team is following for when they should do it. Okay, so back in here in our timeline, this project seems great to me to Lindsay. She's an excellent animator. I know she can do a feature-length film in 2 days. So I'm looking at her schedule here, and I can see the 4th and the 5th are wide open. So one great thing about the timeline view is that you can use it in a split view. If you have 2 displays, it's nice you can put this whole timeline on one display and the main board in the other. But if you just have the one, we can go to split view here. And now we're seeing both views at the same time. So I see she's free the 4th and the 5th. Going to add Lindsay to this project. And I'm going to set the due date for the 4th and the 5th. And now you can see, here's our feature-length film up here. Great. Chugging along. Okay, back to the main table here. We've got our project all assigned out. Everything is good with us. Put in the AD here. It's not Brian. And then why not? I'll PM it. Okay. So the project is all ready, and now we're on to this status column. So you'll see we have tons of statuses here, which some we use a lot more than others, but today we'll just focus on the main ones. So now that this is all ready to go, we're going to set it to assigned, which triggers our very first automation, or several automations actually. So the first one, or two, is that the date log should be showing up here, and the timer will stop. I'm not sure why it's not working, but hasn't happened before, but why not now? So I'll just go ahead and show you how we built that recipe. So when a status changes to, I've got so many in here. Here we go. So when a status changes to assigned, we're going to set the date log to current time. And when it's assigned, we're going to stop the turn timer. So those two automations kick in. Here we go, it worked. So you see, it's logged to the time and it stopped the timer. And then the third automation that we've got off the assign button is that it sends custom notification to the requester. You'll see here, feature length animation was assigned to Lindsay Dunphy and is set to be complete, and it gives us the timeline dates. So that's one way we've really sped up our workflow with Monday, is by creating custom notifications. Because before, the project managers were watching every thread and notifying people when things were finished or status reports, which was a lot of time saved. So the way we set up that automation, back to our automation up here, is when a status changes to assigned, notify requester. So let's jump in here and I'll just show you how it was set up. So we've got our status column, we select that, and we select what status, when it's selected, what status is going to trigger the automation, and then who it's going to notify. So we're using the people columns that you saw back there. We click that. We have 4 people columns on this board, and so we're going to select requester. And my favorite thing about this is you can create the message yourself. So using these buttons down here, we can fill this out. So for example, let's go ahead and delete this and re-enter it. I want to put the item names so people know what we're talking about. And then I can fill this out. I usually get a little cheeky with these. Sometimes people will message me and say, hey, did Monday just call me beloved? And I'll say, Monday and I are one and the same. So it was me, it was Monday. Love it. Okay, so that triggers the notification, and this thing is all ready to be worked on. So in our board, we've got it split into these sections, so new requests, which we've talked about. And then we have each section based on the teams we're working with or the brands we're working with. So in this example, we have our digital team here and our lifestyle team here, and so on and so forth. So this task belongs to the digital team. So I'm going to move it down to this digital group. So I can either drag it or I can select it and move to group digital. And now you can see it's sitting down here waiting to be worked on. So the next stage in this process is for Lindsay, the designer. She's got to figure out, what am I supposed to be working on today now that that's all done and dusted? So the way we accomplish that as a team is we, again, use the timeline view. So you can see if we go up to the view switcher here, we've got a view called Lindsay. And if you've got lots of views, there's a great search feature where you can just type up here, Lindsay. And so jumping into that, we see a filtered view for Lindsay that just shows us what she's working on. That was as far as that was we've got scheduled. And so we have one of these for each of our designer. The way to create it is if you go up to this advanced filter here, which is such a useful tool for a lot of different things, but if you go to the advanced filter up here, there are all these different ways we can filter this board, and it's basically just taking each one of the columns and giving us options to filter by. I'm no mathematician, but that feels like an infinite amount of possibilities to me. So we're gonna go to, we just wanna see Lindsay's, and then save as new view, like that. But we would do that inside of the timeline view. Or you can add view, timeline, and then do it the reverse way. Okay, great. So now, let's say Lindsay's got started. She's going to change the status. So as a team, we really try to stick to keeping the status up to date so that at a glance, everyone can know what we're working on. We have hundreds of requests in the board at a time, so it really helps at a glance to be able to filter, sort, or just look what's in what status. So she'll change that to in progress as she's working. And then when she's all ready for someone to review her work, she'll change it to art director review. And that triggers an automation that sends out a notification to the art director, just like I showed you before. And it's a custom message that says, hey, Lindsay's ready for you to review her work on this. And up here, you'll see that in this example post here, this Facebook post, we use the updates feature to communicate about the design request. We'll go back and forth and back and forth. So you'll see we had a nice conversation here about Lindsay's cat, Bella. She's great. Look at her napping in the sun. So we're pretending this is our Facebook post here. I hope Lindsay will post it later. And so we'll go, the designer and the art director will go back and forth between feedback and review and feedback and review until it is approved. And the art director will approve it, which triggers another few automations. So that sends a message to the requester that it was done. And also it will add in this, probably gonna take a second, but it's gonna add in the date completed here automatically, like it's done down here, which then automatically fills out that week ID. Wonderful, we finished, or let's go ahead and finish this. We finished our feature-length film, coming to Netflix very soon. And when it's all done, we're gonna go in as the project manager and we're going to move this down to our out processing section. So there's two ways to do that. Again, you could drag, but if you're like us, our board is very long. So we're just gonna click it, move to group, and send it to out processing. And we'll scroll down here, and now we see it's an out processing. So the use case for this is that we want to collect everything that's been done in the week. So as project managers, we can go in and make sure that the time tracking was filled out, that all the points are correct, 1,000,000 points, 100,000 points. And that way we will export the whole section to Excel at the end of the week. And we've been using that to create rich data in Data Studio. One other thing before we move on to the other stuff is this, I just want to show you this vacation section. So we were having a problem where I was getting really slap happy with assigning work on people's vacation days because it was in a different system. So now we started putting vacations right here in Monday. So let's say, I'm gonna take a vacation. I'm going to Sri Lanka all next week. I'm gonna put my name in here. And we're using this with Slack actually. So we've got an automation set. So when we change the status to vacation, it's going to send a Slack to our group, our management group. So the way we set that up is by going to this integration section here. So if you click into integrations and add new integration, you'll see this Slack integration, or you can type up here. And after reading through these, we decided we want a status, when a status changes, we want to send a notification in the channel. So we pick the account, and then you'll set up a status message just like you would in any of those custom notifications. And what it looks like on the backside is, here we go. Bon voyage, I'm taking a vacation these dates. So it's just an easy way to alert everyone who needs to be notified that someone's going on vacation. Great. And now to wrap up this section here, once this has all been out processed by the project managers, we're going to send this project back from where it came so that it can be archived and used as a record in the future. So if we click this checkbox here, and we're going to move it back. So we're going to move to board, and this came from the digital design board here. And it gives us a list of all those 4 sections. We're going to move it to completed. Great, it's gone. Out of sight, out of mind. So moving back over to that digital design board, we're going to hit Command B, move to our bolt switcher. And now you'll see here's our feature length animation completed. And now we just let whoever runs this board, in this case the digital team, we'll let them keep it there if they want, or if they want to change the status to archive, it will jump down here. This is collapsed now. It'll jump down here into our archive, feature length animation. And we just have that collapse so that if they don't want to see a huge list of all the work they've ever done, they don't have to see it. But it is still searchable. Great. I know that was a lot. That was definitely the biggest chunk, and hopefully it all made sense. So now I'll move on quickly to some other ways we're using monday.com. The next one is a resourcing dashboard that the project management team uses to get a quick overview of what's going on team-wide. So using that bolt switcher again, Command B, we're going to go to our resource dashboard. Take a second to load up. There's a lot of data on here. Okay. So the use case for this dashboard is that sometimes we'll be in client meetings and we'll have a big project come in and we need to know pretty quickly whether we've got bandwidth to work on something, or if there's too much stuff happening on one day and we need to sort of balance out the workload. So quickly here, you'll see we have a bandwidth pie chart, which I'll dive into more in a second. Just a quick graph that counts what types of work we're doing this week. So you'll see we got 8 statics, 5 animations. Using our effort points, we can see how many points per week we have this week and next week, which is really useful if you know, for example, we can do 30 points in a week. This week's already pretty full, and next week is insane. So we need to figure something out. We have a nice line chart here that shows us for how many new requests we have in. So if we have a big peak on one day, we can go ahead and try and even those out and start moving due dates. Overall deliverables per day. And then one of our favorites here, which I'm going to go into detail about, is the workload feature widget. And also there's a workload view in the main boards as well. So the use case for this for us is, you know, before we were scheduling out the work with the timeline view, which is great if you know the details of every project that's going on. But on our team, we have 4 different project managers, and sometimes there's so many projects you just can't get down into the dirty to understand what's entailed in each project, and maybe you're looking for some extra help. So this is a great way where we can visualize quickly the quantity or the effort that each project is going to take. So I'll just jump into the setup here. Go to edit and to the gear here. And so you'll see we are going to use the design request board, that main board we just went over. And the way we're going to measure time is with the timeline column. And we're going to want to see what the designers are working on. So this just looks at the people columns. And then the key here is the effort and capacity. So the way that we get these bubbles to either be real small or real large size. So we're going to use that story point system that we talked about where we estimate coming in. So we're going to select the points column, and then we're going to set what our capacity is for the week. So we know that we can do 6 points per day. 6 times 5 days in the work week is, I can do the math, 30. So if, for example, if we were to suddenly say we can only do 15 points in a week, then we're in a lot of trouble. But we can do 30 points in a week. So again, down here. So what's great about this is I might have no idea what these things are that Lindsay's working on, but I'm looking for help in doing something. And so I can see, oh, you know what? Actually, it looks like Kyle doesn't have enough to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and get him working on that project. And then lastly in here, we've got this bandwidth chart. We just are basically looking at, again, those effort points, but we're splitting them up by those billing codes or buckets. And again, the setup's quite easy. We're just picking the information from design request. We're picking a pie chart, and then we want to use the billing code to segment them. Great. Hopefully that was enough detail for you. Quickly going to move on to a rate card. So bolt switch again, Command B, and we're going to go jump to the rate card. So the use case for this one is just to give people who are maybe not designers or clients, maybe if you would want, or other people on other teams, an example of what the different types of work we can do are, how long they'll take, and generally how much they'll cost. So you see we've got this board broken down right now into 2 groups, visual design and animations. And as we mentioned earlier, we've got this level system worked out. So basically, this is where they could go in and see how difficult is the request they're asking for. And it's all leveled out for them here, which just associates to how long the production time is and how much lead time we're going to need for it. So for our feature length, we definitely needed that 7 days to get started on it. It also links out to an example deck. So this is just a link column. And if you click on here, it's going to take us to a Google Slides deck that has an example of each one of these elements. And then lastly, not everyone in our agency is on monday.com yet. Or maybe we want to share this externally with a client. So if we go to this main table view up here, we can make this viewable to the whole world if we go to this more buttons and share settings. And then it gives us this great shareable link where we can jump out and send this link to anybody. Great. And then we've been working from home quite a bit. And so monday.com has been super helpful for us to stay on track and as productive as ever. One thing we ran into, let me go ahead and get to this board before I start talking about it. Again, Command B, bolt switch to the daily and up. So most of you are probably having daily stand-ups where you talk about what you're going to be working on. But we found that come the end of the day, it's hard to know whether did somebody forget to work on something, or are they working late on something? So we just kind of need to have an end of day checkout. So you'll see here, I've got me and some famous world leaders. And the way this works is that at the end of the day, we'll have the designer Slack their project manager and say, hey, I'm all done, or I'm going to be working late on this one. And then the project manager will come here to the status column, and they either select signed off or working late, or if they didn't message at all, we've got a naughty marks column, which basically just helps us keep track of, hey, you know what, looks like Park Geun-hye is having a hard time checking in, so maybe we need to have a conversation with her. And then a checkbox column, which is utterly satisfying to ask them if they've completed their time card for the week. And it looks like Park Geun-hye has not. And again, this is like for maybe leadership or other project managers to quickly see, you know, is someone still online? Are they still working? Can I bother them? And have they finished all their work? Great. And then the next one we're going to go to is a cost estimator. So bolt switch. I'm going to go to the design cost estimates board. And this one's really exciting, and it's a new one that's working with the new sub-items feature. So it's been really great for us. Before we were doing estimates in just Google Sheets and sending them off to the strategist, accounts team, or directly to the clients to be reviewed, but it was starting to get hard. There were so many of them to keep track of what their status was, which was the perfect use case for Monday. So you'll see here, we've got two estimates in here, 4th of July hero animation. And there's some familiar columns you can see, billing code, people associated with it, some status columns, like incremental, which team it belongs to. But the real exciting thing is the sub-items. So if we click on this expand sub-items here, and if you don't have sub-items already turned on, I think if you just right-click on any task, there's an option to turn them on. And so you'll see we have this estimate broken out as sort of a line by line. And that's been really great because you can either make the line like a single expense, you can make it by person, whatever really fits the way you're estimating or quoting things. And we've got a timeline column for each phase of this project. So we're going to start here and work our way down. We've got a rate column that ties to the rate of the person that's going to be doing it, how many hours we're estimating, and then a formula column that just multiplies the two together. One of the really, really great things about the sub-items feature is that the columns you have in the sub-items don't need to match the parent. So the child doesn't need to relate to the parent at all. I can relate to that. Just kidding, I love you, mom and dad. And so you can get these items to show up here on this top column, but it can be totally independent what you decide to put down here. So the way to make them roll up to that parent line is if you just click on the top of the column here. I already have it turned on, so it says it, but there's a show parent summary on parent item, and it will just add this little section up here. And so the way this works is we're just multiplying these, and then we're summing that all and rolling it up to the total cost here. And what we've also done with this one is we've set up an automation for it. So this is out with the client now, but let's say the client loves it, they want to do it, they think it's a great price. Then we mark it approved. And so what we're doing is triggering an automation. We do approved. So when a status changes to approved, we're going to create an item in that main design request board. So basically this is acting as a reminder that we need to get started on this project. And so just like I showed you before, we just need to map what items are going to go where. So we're going to keep the name column in the name column. Art director is going to be the same, etc. Billing code is going to be the same. And so you'll see, if we jump back to that main design request board, bolt switch, Command B, design request board, 4th of July hero animation, there it is. And it brought over all of our people and bill code. Great. Wonderful. And the very last thing is the client-facing timeline. So go to Command B, client timeline. I know I'm going quickly here. Hopefully you're hanging in there. So we use these client-facing timelines have been really successful. So some of you may have, in the past, for example, been sending out timelines via email, where you'll make a whole list, and inevitably something changes, and you got to resend that list out to everyone. And eventually, you have a 77-thread email chain. And so we've been using this instead. It's been very successful. So if I jump to the main table here, you can see in this example, we've got this project split up into groups that are kind of based on the components of the overall campaign. So the video component, the Instagram component, etc. But you can set this up however it makes sense for your project. If we've done it before where one section is Mbooth's responsibilities and the other section is the client responsibilities, for example. And then we just have a simple timeline column here where the PM or whoever will go through and put up a proposed timeline. And then we have a dependency column, which is super helpful. So we have an automation set up, you'll see here, that ensures that the timeline is always going to follow its dependent item. So it sounds complicated, but basically just here in this dependency column, we tell Monday which other item that this item is dependent on. And the way that works in function, if we jump into this client timeline here, and again, of course, they always change, but usually the duration of it doesn't really change. But so let's say we didn't get approval in time, and now we need to start the project on first, and you'll see the magic of it as everything falls into line after. It's a big time saver. And then like I showed you with the rate card, we've just been sharing this view externally with our client. So we go into here, share settings, and then get that public link, which we keep at the top here for everyone to just easily jump in and grab. Yeah, so I think that's probably a good place to start or to stop. And I'll turn it back over to, actually no, I'm gonna jump in here and show you these conclusion slides is what I'm gonna do. So before we get to the Q&A, just go over these quick conclusions here. You'll see this quite a bit. So I think one of the big takeaways from us for Monday is this huge decrease in the amount of time we spend scoping out projects and assigning them out. Because we have all that data really easily at hand, it's so much easier to see those things come in and put them in their spot really quickly rather than constantly figuring out the lay of the land. And it's really helped us to get more accurate cost estimates and time estimates by going back in history and looking through all that wonderful data. And yeah, I think some tips, definitely like turning people on your team into, especially the leaders on your team, into power users, like getting them really good at using monday.com and seeing it as the wonderful tool it is and not some obstacle or other system to learn, really helps spread that down among the ranks and get people really using Monday to its fullest potential. And then lastly, I'm just setting the rules of how we're going to use Monday as a team and just making sure everyone sticks to it has been really helpful so that, you know, we're going to change the status here. We're always going to put our conversations back in Monday and so that everyone's using it the same way. Yeah.